Hi everyone, it's Tanya and welcome to today's video. Today I am a little bit different angle. It's just a different angle because I wanted to include a little bit of something snowy because it is soon a new year. Today is Christmas, well, Catholic Christmas, not like Russian, not my Christmas, so Catholic Christmas. But still I wanted to congratulate you if you are from the country that celebrates Catholic Christmas on the 24th or 25th of December. I wanted to congratulate you. I wanted to wish you all the best. I hope that you are spending a beautiful, cozy, lovely time with your family. And trust me, spending time with your family is so important. I really miss my family, my parents and my brother, and I would love to spend time with them. Hopefully it will be possible next year, so let's hope for the best. Yeah, I wish you all the best. I hope that you are having the best time with your loved ones. As for today's video, I wanted to talk about something positive. I wanted to talk about something optimistic, and so that's why I wanted to talk to you about the best books I have read in 2020. Well, actually they will not all be included in this video because in June or in May I made a video where I talked about my favorite books of the year so far, so I will link that video up there because there are some brilliant books there. They are also my favorites of the year, but I just didn't want to repeat myself because on today's list we have 16 books and also the previous list I think has 10 or something. That other list includes 10 more of my favorite books of the year, but those are the books that I read in the beginning of the year, so they will be linked up there. And today we are going to talk about the books that I read in the second half of the year. So now let's begin. As you see, we have a lot of books to go through, so let's start. These books are in no particular order, they're just in the order that I took them from the shelf. So it's no order, not even in the order that I read them. The book that is on the top, the first book that I really want to talk about is Cider with Rosie by Lori Lee. It's not a novel, I wouldn't call it a novel. It's more of a collection of his memories of his childhood, living in the small English village with all the like old tradition and old lifestyle and like all the old characters that lived in that village. And it's just a very heartwarming and so kind and so full of love and understanding of those people book. This book is beautiful. I love it. After I read it, I actually ordered already another book by Lori Lee because writing is beautiful. The whole book is filled with love. It's filled with love. There were some terrible events that happened in this book, that took place in this book. However, they are like, he kind of writes about people and doing those things with some kind of not understanding, but also it's like it's the way the village treated them too, like kind of understanding and just acceptance. It's like I don't want to give it away, but there will be some like terrible and scary events happening, but the village just kind of, I guess, accepting it. It's not that it's a good thing, it's just the way it was. It's just the way it was. And so I liked this kind of matter-of-fact attitude, without criticizing, without hating, without like teaching you or moralizing. It was just describing life the way it was, with all of its ups and downs. So that's what I liked about this book, and the writing was beautiful. Mostly it is a very positive book. Mostly it's a positive book, but just like life, there are some bad things happening, and they're also here. So yeah, I would highly recommend reading this book. I would highly recommend Cider with Rosie. I think it's a beautiful book. I am so glad that I read it. Next book that I want to show off is a book that I love a lot. Well, all of these books I love, so I cannot say that I love it more than others. I love all of them, pretty much equally. I think all of them are brilliant, and this book is brilliant too, and you know that I love it because I have already talked about it. This is The Enlightenment of the Greengage Tree by Azar. This book was shortlisted for International Man Booker Prize this year. This book was my bias, I guess you can call it. This was my favorite book of the shortlist, and I really hoped that it would win. It didn't, but it was many people's favorite book, actually. I feel like if there was like an award for that like book chosen by the readers, I feel like this book had a very good chance of winning. It would be this or the Hurricane Season. I didn't finish Hurricane Season. It was like too dark, too scary, it was kind of too much for me, so I didn't read the Hurricane Season. However, many people loved that. I loved this book. Like, this book was the best for me. This book it's a dark one. It's not an optimistic one. It's a book by an Iranian author recounting events of Iranian Revolution in 1968 or 69. 1979. We follow a story of a family of 2 parents and their 3 children, and what happened to them as victims of kind of circumstances. They didn't participate actively in the revolution itself. They were just affected by it. And this book shows how this terrible event affected the family. I heard from Camille, from what Camille reads. I will link his channel down below in the description. When he did the review of the book, he said that each character of the family represents different kind of group of population. Like, the son of the family represents students, the father represents the educated strata of the population, the younger daughter represents the innocent victims of these events. And actually the story is told by a ghost of this younger daughter. I will not tell you more because I don't want to tell you too much, but it's a beautiful book that mixes together realism and Iranian folklore, so it has some element of magical realism to it as well. And it was a beautiful book. It was just a beautiful story, beautiful book, beautifully written, and I loved it, so I would also highly recommend reading this book. One more book that I adored I adored this book also this year is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. This is the first book in the African trilogy. I have read the first 2 books, so Things Fall Apart and The Arrow of God. Things Fall Apart is my favorite. I also enjoyed The Arrow of God, but I think I have to say that Things Fall Apart is my favorite. I really enjoyed this book. It deals with colonization. It tells a story of how English people come to this small Nigerian village and how they bring their culture and their religion, how they're kind of trying to change the life and culture that have been there before. They come with the attitude of all of your beliefs are wrong, all of your lifestyles are wrong, we will teach you the right way to live. So that's the attitude that they brought. And then the book represents the struggle of the community, of especially elder people, because younger people, they get fascinated with the new culture and with the new religion, especially because it's so forgiving. Their culture by no means was perfect. It had some strange and terrifying things to it that they would do to different members of the community just because it's the way it has to be done, just because that's what their gods were telling them to do. But it was their culture, it was their life, that's how they were taught to live from childhood. And so the older members of the community, they want to protect that lifestyle, they want to protect those beliefs because they genuinely believe in them, they genuinely believe in their gods, and they genuinely believe that this is the right lifestyle, and they don't want to be taught otherwise. And so we follow a story of this one man. His name is Okonkwo. He is a very respected man in this community. He is not a perfect man. He has 3 wives and he has a very fiery temper. He takes care of his wives and he takes great care of his children. He works hard. He is a great respectable man, but he does have a fiery temper. And That's why living with him is difficult for his wives, it's difficult for his children, and he has this sense that he is right, he is always right. It's difficult to convince him otherwise. And so it's just the story of a struggle of this man trying to protect his community's lifestyle, trying to protect the religion that he believes in, not always in great ways, not always in right ways, and you will just see what it brings him to. But at the same time you will see a lot of culture being shown, and it was so fascinating. It was so fascinating and interesting to see that culture represented in this book. I loved it. I will definitely be rereading it. This is a great book, and I would highly recommend it. You will not regret reading. You will love it, like, I guarantee. Well, okay, maybe not 100%, but you know, I'm sure many of you will love it. So Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, highly recommended. Next book I want to talk to you about is a Japanese book, and this was a recent release. I don't know if it was the release of 2020, probably not, but it's a new book. So this is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe. Oh no, not Tales from the Cafe is the second book. It's the book that already came out in 2020. The first book is just Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This is also more like a collection of 4 short stories. They are connected. They are connected by the place. They are connected by like what's happening. But they are pretty much separate stories. I probably wouldn't call it a novel. I would probably more say that it's like a collection of short stories. But these short stories are so touching. Something I like about Japanese literature, what I have read of it, obviously I haven't read much, but from what I have read of it, it's very emotional. It kind of hits, at least me, it always hits me in my feels and it makes me feel. That's the same thing that what this book did. It made me feel, it made me emotional. I cried a little bit because these stories are emotional. They deal with death. They deal with just different family situations. They deal with love as well. I guess the main message of the book is that maybe you will not always be able to change the situation, but you will always be able to change your attitude to the situation and what you think of it and how you perceive it. So I guess maybe this was the main message. But I loved this book. It was great. I actually have a reading vlog of this book. I will link it up here. I went to different coffee shops because this book takes place in this magical, mysterious cafe where you can come, order a cup of coffee and travel back in time. There are some rules, and these rules are very discouraging actually. They discourage a lot of people because after you listen to them, you kind of think that what's the point then? Like, what's the point of traveling if I cannot do certain things? So it discourages a lot of people. But some people that are in this book decide to take the trip. They decide to go back in time. And so these are 4 stories of different people who decided to go back in time, and you will see why they decided and what they managed to accomplish by that. It's a great, very emotional book, and I would highly recommend it if you're looking for something just kind, cozy, something that maybe will make you cry a little bit. Yeah, this book is great. I would highly recommend it. Next book is just brilliant. It's just the definition of brilliant in my opinion, because it is Italo Calvino, Under the Jaguar Sun. This is a collection of his 3 short stories. Initially the book was intended to be the collection of like, I guess 5 stories, because each story is based on a human sense. The first story talks about taste. Second story talks about hearing. The last story talks about smell. And so there were 2 senses left that he wanted to write about. I think vision, right, and probably touch. So that was the initial idea, to kind of write stories where human senses would take the first role, the first place. These stories are brilliant. The writing of this book is so beautiful. I think my favorite story has to be the second one, which is like not much is happening there. We follow this one king who sits on his throne and he is listening to the sounds of his palace. He believes that if something will be off in those sounds, if something will be strange and unusual, that will be the time when he will be deposed. He's kind of obsessed with the idea of keeping the throne to himself. That's why he's always sitting on this throne. He doesn't go anywhere, he just sits on that throne. So it's a weird story, it's a strange story, but just the writing of it, just the language of it, like how beautiful. I also feel like the translator has done such a great job. Like translator of these stories has done a wonderful job. I just want to give you like a paragraph. I want to give you an example of his writing. A voice means this. There is a living person, a throat, chest, feelings, who sends into the air this voice, different from all other voices. A voice involves the throat, saliva, infancy, the patina of experienced life, the mind's intentions, the pleasure of giving a personal form to sound waves. What attracts you is the pleasure this voice puts into existing as voice. But this pleasure leads you to imagine how this person might be different from every other person, as the voice is different. Are you trying to imagine the woman who sings? But no matter what image you try to attribute to her in your imagination, the image voice will always be richer. You surely do not wish to lose any of the possibilities it contains, and so it is best for you to stick to the voice, resist the temptation to run outside the palace, and explore the city street by street, until you find the woman who is singing. I don't know how exactly to explain it, but his writing kind of, especially in the second story, kind of gave me goosebumps when I read it. So I think you have to read it. Like, you have to read it, Italo Calvino, Under the Jaguar Sun. Anything from the list but Italo Calvino, you have to give this book a read. It's super short. It's just like 100 pages. Not even 100 pages. It's just 82 pages actually. Super short. Just 3 short stories. But it's a must read. It's an absolute must read. So highly recommend it. I just realized that it has been 20 minutes and I have only talked about 5 books out of 16. I have to do it faster. Okay, next book that I read. I also have reading vlog for this book, actually specifically dedicated only to this book. So I will link it also up here if you want to watch. I think it was a very cozy rainy day when I was reading this book. So I don't know, I like that vlog. Well, self-promotion, but you know, I'm sorry. But I don't know, I really enjoyed the experience of reading this book. Maybe it's also a reason why I like it. But the book itself is very interesting. It deals with very different people, about whom I have never read a similar book before. It talks about... This is a book by a Korean author, first of all. Korean author writing about like Korean realities. And so he writes about this family, a mother and a son, who are very, very poor. Initially, the mother was working on a market. She was like a stall seller. She was selling some kind of food or maybe clothes. I don't remember what she was selling. But they were very poor. They were living in the slums of Seoul. And then, eventually, they meet her husband's, who is currently in prison, old friend. The friend comes to her and says that you can come and live in my community. You will make more money. You will have more money for yourself. You will not have to pay any rent because of the condition that they live there. They live in shacks. Basically, he's inviting her to live in kind of garbage dump place. So what she will do there, the job that people do there, is going through trash and finding items that can be kind of recycled. Later they collect these items and they sell them, and that's how they make their money. And they basically live right there in the garbage dump place, and they build their own shacks also of the materials that they find in the garbage. So that's the life that he is suggesting her. She agrees because she needs the money, she has a son to take care of, and they move there. Later on, the woman, obviously, of course, she starts living with the man, which annoys her son and makes him upset. But it's not so much about this, it's not the story about relationship in the family, it's more a story about life of these people, what they have to go through, what challenges they face, how they are actually abandoned by the government and by everyone, how, because they're basically homeless people, they smell. Obviously they smell because they live in that place, and when they want to go to the city, it's a whole long procedure for them to go into the city because they smell, and everybody in the city recognizes them just by their smell. So if they want to go to the city just to go shopping or just to spend time in a bar or in a coffee shop, they cannot always do it. It's like a whole special event for them to go out. And so it's a life about stories of these people, mostly concentrated on children because the child is the main protagonist, two main kids. It also has an element of magical realism, which is also very beautiful. I personally loved the relationship between people here, because even though they have a terrible life, they have a terrible circumstances, but they still manage to keep their humanity, they still manage to keep love and support and understanding for each other. Not everyone, of course not everyone. You will see this book portrays different members of this community and different struggles of different members and what happens to certain people. You will see all of it, good and bad, in here. But again, I would say that in general the book is not depressing. It's not depressing, it's sad, but it has some light in it, and that's what I really liked about it. So yeah, The Familiar Things by Won Sok-young, also I would highly recommend. Then come two books by my favorite author well, one of my favorite authors of the year. I discovered her this year and I just fell in love with her writings. I have already talked a lot about both of these books, so again I will not go into much details about them. I will link a video where I talked about at least one of them. I will link a video with the vegetarian because I think that video is, I also like that video so I will link it up here. It's also a reading vlog where I was reading this book. So The Vegetarian by Han Kang and The Human Acts. My favorite out of these two is The Human Acts, but The Vegetarian is the book that won the International Man Booker Prize in 2014. I don't remember when, maybe 2014 or 16. Both of these books are brilliant. My favorite is The Human Acts. It's just that it's more emotional for me. They deal with very different things. This deals with women and women's position in the world of man and how women are treated, especially in the Korean society. This book deals with a terrible event that happened in Korean history, which was Gwangju uprising, and how it was brutally suppressed by the government and how it affected lives of different people and different families. So both of these books are pretty dark. This book is the darker one, I would say, but this one is also pretty dark. This one is very bizarre. It's strange. It's strange and bizarre. So like, if you want to read it, prepare yourself for something weird, but like good weird, you know, weird in a good sense. This is more straightforward. This book is more straightforward. It's sad and I would say it's more depressing, but it's beautiful. Both of these books are beautiful and I just love Han Kang and I am very excited to explore her other books. So Han Kang is, I think, my favorite author of the year. Next book that I read is The Insufferable Guacho by Roberto Bolaño. This is also a collection of 3 short stories and I loved this small collection. My favorite stories are the first and the third. So the first deals with this man living in Argentina and I forgot, something happens and he decides to move to a countryside, and it's about him kind of trying to find his place in this new reality of his country. I think default happened and he decided to go to the country and live in the country, and he doesn't quite fit in the country, but when he tries to come back, he doesn't quite fit in the city, and it's about the man trying to find his place. The last story is about a writer, an Argentinian writer, fictional character, who writes a book, and the book is plagiarized by a movie director from France, I think. And it's the story about this strange relationship between this writer and this movie director who plagiarizes his works. These two have never met each other, but our writer, he kind of starts writing books for the director. Like, he is not mad. He is constantly advised by his friends to sue the man, obviously, because he's plagiarizing his works. He doesn't want to do it because he kind of sees this director as this one reader who gets him, who completely understands his work. He starts writing novels kind of for that man. At some point he realizes that the director stopped plagiarizing his works. He started making other movies which are not as good and not as successful as his plagiarized movies were, but he stops plagiarizing his novels, and it kind of worries our writer, and he decides to do something about it. It's basically just a short story about this strange, weird relationship between a writer and the reader. That's how I saw it, and I really enjoyed it. So Roberto Bolaño, also very short, 3-story short collection of his stories. One more novel is by George Eliot, and this is Silas Marner. This work made me fall in love with George Eliot as a writer. I want to explore more of her works now. This was quite a challenge, actually. This was quite a challenge. For some reason, I don't know, but for some reason it was more difficult for me to read than other books. I don't know why. Is it her language? Is it just the topic of the novel about a man who is a very unfortunate man? I felt so bad for him. The story starts with him being very religious and going to church and attending this community, like religious community, having a loved girl whom he loves to pieces, but then something happens, somebody betrays him, and he loses everything. He loses the community, he loses the girl whom he loves, and he loses his best friend. He loses everything. He loses his faith as well, and he moves to a remote village where he starts just working. Like, he doesn't have any friends there, he doesn't want to have any friends, he doesn't join in the community, he doesn't go to church even though he is constantly invited. He kind of lives as this outcast, and he just works and works and works, and he starts living for the money. It's not that he wants to spend the money, he just collects it, he just kind of saves it, and it brings him joy to just, like, every day after work he takes the money out of the, like, kind of hole in the ground that he made to keep the money, to hide it, and he just kind of looks at it and just, you know, rejoice in just having that gold. But then at some point the gold is stolen from him. All of it is stolen from him. So it's kind of the second time he loses something meaningful to him. First time he lost his faith and he lost his loved one and he lost his friend. Second time he lost the money that became again everything for him. But the community starts kind of turning to him. But then a child, a lovely child, finds her way into his house, and it's a chance for him to transform himself, to transform his life. So it's a lovely book, it's a heartwarming book, and I loved it. Next book is a Russian one. which I'm so excited that I read. I slowly started getting back into like reading Russian literature, classic and modern. This is Happy Funeral by Lyudmila Ulitskaya. This is also a short book, just a short novel, but for some reason why I loved it so much, it felt very Russian. I miss, like, obviously I miss my parents, obviously I miss my family, but I also miss this kind of Russianness. I don't know how to put it. I miss Russian character. I miss my friends. Господи, now I will start crying, no? Not Russia as a country, but I miss this like Russian something. I miss Russian things, you know? And so this book kind of reminded me of them. This book felt very Russian. I don't know how to explain it, but the characters in here, the people in here were very Russian. And maybe that's why I felt like I liked it so much. I loved every character, especially the main character, Alec. Maybe the other reason why this book resonated with me so much is because it's about immigrants. This is a book about Russian immigrants living in America, in New York. It's about their lives, how it changed, why they immigrated, did they find their happiness in America? Some of them didn't. And at the same time, how they keep the connection to their home country, how they're still concerned about the country. They don't want to go back. They don't think that there is a place for them there, how they still love it. And I just really resonated with this book a lot. We will not talk about it too much because I start crying. This book was shortlisted for Man Booker Prize 2020. I have a review of this book, which I will also link up here. This book wasn't perfect for me. Like, there were some things that I wanted to be explored more. I wanted this book to be longer, but it is like, it's still a brilliant book. I will link one more review of this book down below in the description box. That review is just brilliant. It's a very good review of the book. It's just a brilliant review. You should watch it. Like, if you want to read the book, watch it. It will just make you so excited about it. Like, it's a great review, so I will link it down below. I forgot the name of the channel. KB Books, maybe KB Books. It's just great. It's a very good review, so go and check it out. I will not be able to talk about the book as well as he did it there. He just loved this book way more than I do, and I think he understood this book better than I did. So definitely check out the KB Books review down below in the description box. Basically, this is a story of mother-daughter relationships. It has a topic of memory. I think my favorite part about this book were these two topics: mother-daughter relationships and topic of memory, and how it is very subjective. It's not an objective thing, it's very subjective actually. I thought it was very fascinating, like how she talked about it and how she explored it. I wanted more of this book. Like, I still stand by that. I still stand by that I think certain things here needed to be explored better. The writing is great. The writing of this book is it's great. It's just great. The idea behind it, the thought behind it, the execution is great as well. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a great book. So I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. It's not an easy read, it's not a light read. It's worth it, you know, it's worth your effort, it's worth your time. So I would highly also recommend this book, and it's one of my favorites. Two more books. I will just, because it's already too long, I will just show you very quickly books that the rest of them. Two more books that were also shortlisted for International Man Booker Prize this year is Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa, and this book is very famous, I'm sure you have heard of it before, and also Teal by Daniel Kelman. With this book, again, it's not a perfect book for me. I had some problems with it. I will link my also video where I read all the books from the shortlist up here. You can watch. I talk about all of these books in detail in that video. It wasn't a perfect book for me, but it is still a great book. Like, the exploration of relationship here, of characterization in this book is done very well. Plot is also very compelling, and you just like this this is a book that is kind of reads easily and you can get through it very easily. I really enjoyed it. It was a great read and a lot of people loved it. I feel like I watched when I watched the announcement of the winner, somebody in that video commented that it particularly resonates with American people. Like, why American people love it so much is because it's resonating with their current situation in the country. I feel like if you're American, try and read it, because apparently it will resonate with you. A lot of American people liked it. I liked it too, but maybe for different reasons. I feel like the man was talking about like resonating with the social and political situation. In my case, I was fascinated and I absolutely loved the human relationship in this book, especially relationship of our main protagonist and her family's old friend. I thought it was such a beautiful friendship and just relationship was great. So great book. And Daniel Kellman is just a fascinating reimagining of the legend of Teal, a German legend, which I still haven't read. I need to check that legend out. I know that like a lot of people recommended me to check that legend out, but it's basically like, yeah, the retelling of the legend of Teal Eulenspiegel, which is a character from a German folklore who is like a trickster. He has a circus, he travels around Germany with his circus. It's also a story about a 30-year war in Europe. The way author described it, he said that it's a story about resilience of a trickster in this like horrifying events. I particularly liked the storytelling in this book because the book is not like it's not a linear storytelling. He kind of gives you different pieces of his life in different sequences, and it's your job as a reader to kind of put all of these pieces together and to figure out the sequence and the like time. It was fascinating to read. I really liked that. I love this book. I need to reread it actually, but it's a great one. One more book is Shaggy Bane, which won Booker Prize this year. Again, for me, I love books that make me feel. I love books that make me cry. I love books that kind of, you know, that I can feel for. And this was that type of book. It's very emotional. It deals with like just the horrifying circumstances in life of certain people living in Glasgow in second part of somewhere 20th century, and it deals with alcoholism and how alcoholism affects lives of family, in particular children, because our main protagonist is a child and his mom is an alcoholic. And it's a story about how children are always, how they always love their parents no matter what, how their parents, even if they are not perfect, even if they are weak, are still an object of love for their children. Yeah, I like this book. I know that not everybody is satisfied with the winner of Booker Prize, and I don't think that it's ever going to happen, but for me, I like this book. And the last book that I want to mention is the book that I finished recently, like yesterday or like a few days ago. It's a new release by Susanna Clarke, Piranesi. I was so nervous to pick this book up. I was afraid a little bit because I loved Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell so much, and all I will say is that this book did not disappoint. You will see, I don't know if this video will go up before my Piranesi review or after. If it goes after, then I will link my review up here. If it goes later, so then just keep your eyes out for the review, because it will be coming next after this video. I will just say that I love this book so far, so I will not tell you more. Look, you will have to watch the review. But yeah, so there you have it, guys. It was a very long video, which I apologize for, but I hope maybe you had a good breakfast, or I don't know, some part of your day, lunch, dinner, talking about the books with me. I hope you will give some of them a read. I promise they deserve your attention. I promise you. At least like from my perspective. Like obviously everybody has different tastes and different preferences, but I myself adored all of these books. So I would highly recommend all of them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a very good day. Again, I congratulate you with Catholic Christmas if you are celebrating it now. I hope you're having a lovely day with your family and loved ones and friends, and maybe not friends in current situations, but you know, I hope you're having a good time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon in my next videos. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.